Now, these guys are going to need to hear themselves, so I have these little mixer boxes with 5 inputs. I hope you can see that. And each person is going to have their own with the drums, the bass, guitar, keys, and voice. So we need to get the sound that's coming in here out to the box, which will be the outputs of my audio interfaces. The inputs are coming in to record. I'm listening on 1 and 2, but then I have 3 through 8 to be, I can send anywhere I want. So we'll put the drums on 3, output 3, and we'll make a group of drums. And I've set my DAW so that the auxiliary sends all work in tandem if the tracks are grouped. I grouped my drums together, and I chose within the group the attributes that the level and mutes of the sends are all combined. That's a customizing thing that you can do in just about every DAW. Okay, the bass is going to come to 4. The guitar will be 5. And we'll make a group of him so that these will all, see, as I said, they'll move in tandem. We'll let the vocals be 6 because I'm going to reserve a stereo pair. Stereo pairs in your interface always start with the odd number, so that's why I went to the voice first, which leaves me with 7 and 8 for my keyboard. Now, I want these sends to the headphones to be independent of my mix. If, in other words, if I want to hear a little more drums in my control room, I don't want to affect what the drummer's hearing because it's going to affect his playing. His sound should be constant and controllable only by him, not by me. So I'm going to put all these sends in what's called pre-fader mode. So that means these sends occur before any of the changes that I make here. So I hold the Option key and I click pre, and they all go into pre. You see the little P light up. So even if I mute the drums, the drummer's still going to be hearing drums. The other thing I want to do is I want the faders to follow the main panning. So you can see that if I want it to follow the main panning, so that if it's a stereo field, as in the case of the keyboards, if I pan one side or other down here, this will follow. You see this fader following me, what I'm hearing. You want the stereo picture to appear in everybody's headphones the same way. So, for example, if I had the drums on a stereo field, which sometimes you do, you can pan his tom-toms around to be the same way that he's hearing it. You may be in a small space such as this. I have 2 isolated rooms, but we're going to have 5 people, including a singer. So I won't be able to isolate a guitar amp and a drummer and a singer. So we're going to put the singer in here with me, with the keyboard, which you won't hear except on the recording, and the bass, which is going direct, no amp. So other than the singer, that's the only live sound in the room. So I'll be in headphones, as will all the guys, and everybody will be dialing up their mix. And the singer will be making sound in my control room. The guitar amp will be in another room. You could use a closet in the hallway or something. and the drummer will be in my one acoustic space. So even on a very small budgetary scale or small real estate scale, you can make a pretty darn good recording if you just set yourself up with a little bit of logistics and planning. So we've got all our inputs to the band coming in, and we've got them all coming out to my mix, and we've got them all going out to their headphones. Now, in order to just make a little nicer environment while we record, I'm going to add a reverb. So I'm going to add an auxiliary track from a bus. This is a routing within the DAW, nothing to do with the interface. So I will use bus 1 and 2 as my reverb. I'll put a fader ready to go there, and I'll insert a reverb on the auxiliary track. Let's see here. Okay, here's a nice plate reverb. So whoever I send, like maybe the voice, if I send to the reverb, when that person sings, the reverb will fold back into our mix. So I'm sending by bus, going through the reverb, and coming back in the mix 1 and 2. And the last thing I'm going to need from the control room perspective is a master fader, so that I can monitor the overall level that's coming out. I want to be able to control these volumes of everything so that they're strong but not going in the red. It doesn't hurt the output to go in the red. It hurts if the recording goes in the red at this point. But in general, the master fader helps me just keep track of where my overall mix is, so that when we're listening to the 2-track, it's not distorting. And we're pretty much set up and ready to start testing sound. So each of these inputs corresponds in my patch bay to an input out over in. These are the 8 outputs. These are the 8 inputs, or 16. I have 24. So I'll patch the microphone through the wall, through a tie line, which will show up here in the patch bay. The microphone will go into a mic preamp, and we'll show you these one by one as we set up the band. The microphone tie lines through the wall into the preamp. The preamp goes maybe to a compressor or maybe directly into the audio interface, which will then show up here. And I'll check them one by one. We'll set up the kick drum mic, put it through the mic pre, and he'll hit the kick drum, or we'll scratch the mic, and I'll be able to make sure that I have signal there. And it's kind of important to do them one by one and check yourself very carefully so you don't get crossed up and patch a wire the wrong way. Just go one by one from the mic all the way to the mic pre, put it in record or put it in input, and see that you have sound from track 1. Then when you know you have that, turn it off and mute it. Go on to the snare drum 2. So one by one, I'll test that's called a line check. Just like on a PA system when you're on a gig, you check everybody's mic to make sure before the guys come to record. I want to be kind of ready for them and set up and know that I've got everything patched right. Then when they start to play, I just have to adjust my volume to get an optimal recording level. And we'll talk about that when we get the guys playing sound. So this is an example of how I would do this in Pro Tools, but every DAW pretty much works the same way. You have tracks, you have inputs, you have outputs, you have bus sends to auxiliary faders, and you have I/O sends. These are my audio interface sends back out into the world, into monitor speakers or tape decks or headphone amps. So you have your analog in and outs at your converter, your audio interface, and you have your bus and sends and returns and your mix master fader all within your DAW. So they all work the same way. Ableton, Logic, Digital Performer, Studio One, just about every commercial program that I've ever seen. And the more you understand your own, the faster you'll be able to absorb working on another one. They might put the buttons and the menu things in a different place, but the idea of the audio is working the same. And this is emulated after a real studio. This graphic representation and this signal routing chain came from the days of tape recorders and mixers. It's emulating exactly what the hardware used to do, which makes it easy for engineers to understand.